What does the Joy of Creation hide off camera in the bedroom and office levels? In the Joy of Creation story mode, you're made to survive within the haunted halls of the Cawthon's family home. In the bedroom and office levels, you'll face the ignited animatronics with the best weapons you can muster, the curtains lining your window, and a trusty flashlight. With such horrors in our path, there's tons of interesting things to see off camera as well. Like, did you know there's a hilariously broken Freddy just beyond the walls of the office? We'll also be breaking some stuff as we go, so I hope you enjoy today's look behind the scenes of the Joy of Creation. Now, as usual, I'd like to quickly recap what we'll be covering. That way we're all caught up on the flow of events. So as we head into the bedroom, we'll be playing from the perspective of Scott's son Nick. In classic FNAF fashion, we must make it at 6 a.m. Only here, we're managing our sanity instead of power. As the night goes on, Freddy will tap the window with his broken arm before eventually looking inside. You must quickly close the curtains to avoid being seen. Otherwise, he'll enter the room and jump scare you. Much like Freddy, Foxy's arrival is forewarned by his hooked hand appearing behind the player. And the only way to avoid his jump scare is to sit back in the crib and pretend to sleep. Bonnie, who enters the door in front of us, will knock 3 times before coming inside. You must turn the light off and sit in the crib to avoid their attack, making it a lot harder to fend off the other animatronics. Chica appears in the closet to our right, and unlike the other animatronics, Chica is typically non-fatal, the only exception being when our sanity is extremely low. At 5 a.m., our sanity is forced into the red, making things a lot more chaotic as we near the end of the night. Recap aside, let's begin by taking a look at the map around us. First, the area just outside the window is a lot less fleshed out than you may think. There are a couple of trees outside the window that are just floating here, and the rain effect seen through the window occupies very little space. There really isn't a reason to add more than this, considering the player can only view this area from a set position inside the crib. Now, directly next to these other objects, we can find Freddy's arm resting against the side of the house just beyond the player's view. The arm itself isn't directly attached to Freddy, but he is still present just beneath the house itself. He's rotated at a bit of an angle, and he just chills here for a majority of the night. From a different angle, we can watch as his severed arm moves up into the window, and after a short time has passed, his arm will then reattach itself as Freddy himself pops up into sight. Well, half of him anyway? For some reason, Freddy's torso completely detaches from his legs when he appears in the window. This is a bit odd to me, especially considering the fact that he reassembles completely when entering the bedroom. This level is slightly less scary now, knowing Freddy's legs are just chilling in the void out of sight. Now, if the player fails to shut the curtains in time, Freddy warps from outside the window and appears directly behind the bed. At this point, a jump scare is pretty much inevitable, but from this angle, it's a bit funnier than you'd expect. As this animation begins, he lunges forward and grabs us, flying up in the ceiling as he does. Blood then splatters above the roof, and we're sent to the game over screen. This animation is hilariously buggy when viewed from this angle, and I had no idea that this was taking place during my original playthrough. While we're on the topic of Freddy clipping through stuff, I should mention that he technically can be seen inside the bedroom before he ever attacks. Due to the angle that he's placed in, the very top of his hat can be seen poking through the floor next to the crib. This isn't typically visible to the player, as it's barely outside our field of view. Overall, it's pretty funny just how buggy Freddy is in the level, and you'd never know it during a typical playthrough. If we take a look behind the closet and just outside the map, we'll find multiple animatronics lined up out here. These are the jump scare models for Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and even Shadow Freddy. What's interesting is that each of these models is currently frozen in place, but if we look behind the crib, we'll find an endless loop of Foxy's jump scare playing out in the void. When Foxy appears behind the bed, you'll see that a separate model is loaded in and his arm extends through the floor. The top of his head is also popping out of the floor, and we can see the rest of his body sticking out through the bottom of the level. From this perspective, it looks like he's hanging on for dear life, and if his hook slips, he'll fall into the void below. The following stage of his animation shows him warping up into a standing pose, clipping through the crib in what looks like a relaxed T-pose. When he's in this stage, we can no longer access the curtains, so we're completely open to being attacked by Freddy if he doesn't get us first. In this shot, you can see both the standard and jump scare model activate at the same time. As I said earlier, if Foxy doesn't kill us first, then Freddy definitely will. And because I never closed the curtains, he took Foxy's place inside the bedroom. He then jump scared me, forcing me to start the night over again. When Foxy gets you though, his jump scare model will be moved into the map, and the previous version will be warped beneath the floor. In bullet time, we can see that he grabs the player and swings his hook at you, killing you instantly. We may have died horrifically, but at least Freddy has some company in the vast nothingness of space. So when Bonnie appears at the door in front of you, he'll knock 3 times before opening it. However, he can also trick the player by knocking twice and never opening it. It turns out that even though it's never opened, Bonnie still appears behind the door when he fakes us out. He has no animations for this knocking sequence, and the door simply opens in front of him. If we're not sitting down with the light off, he'll instantly teleport beside the crib until we look at him. In slow motion, his jump scare is absolutely brutal. We're hit with the famous Bonnie punch as a massive blood splatter stretches across the room. As for Chica, she attacks us through the closet with a typically non-lethal jump scare. We can see from this angle that Chica instantly appears inside the closet as it starts to open. She kind of just stares at us in a "Mom said it's my turn" on the Xbox pose, and if the lights aren't turned off or the player tries to sleep, the door shuts and the jump scare model is instantly moved next to the crib. Afterwards, this version of Chica quickly slides out of the map back to its inactive location. The model, hidden in the closet, never left though, so as far as I know, there will be 2 Chicas loaded in for the rest of the night. So as the night goes on, your sanity level slowly goes down, which is indicated by the colored light on the wall. The lamp behind you is used to slow the loss of sanity, though it can't be regained once it's lost. As it drops, things begin to change around you, which makes it harder to complete the night. Your vision starts to fill with static, your screen begins to shake, and you'll even hallucinate Golden and Shadow Freddy. When he appears, we can see from another angle that Golden Freddy is just floating upside down in our face. It's terrifying when it happens during gameplay, but from this perspective, it's glorious. It looks like he's standing on the ceiling, which makes it a bit hard to take him seriously. While viewing this, Shadow Freddy just clipped through the wall and floated at me before warping beneath the level, which was pretty weird. Now if the player completely runs out of sanity, they'll appear in a bed in the middle of a forest. After looking around briefly, you'll catch a glimpse of Golden Freddy before being sent to the game over screen. The forest, seen in this short sequence, is actually right next to the bedroom itself. There are a bunch of trees out here, and they surround a bed placed in the center. The trees themselves are actually placed a lot lower than the bed itself, and Golden Freddy is seen clipping through the headboard. This loads in with the rest of the map as soon as the night begins, and we're only warped over here when our sanity fully depletes. That's it for the bedroom though, so now let's take a look at the office. So as we head into the office, we'll be stationed behind a desk with 3 monitors in front of us. Each screen contains a different camera for the surrounding areas, and we'll be using these frequently as the night presses on. In this level, you'll use the cameras and a flashlight to ward off the incoming waves of ignited animatronics. There are 2 doors and a window that you must keep tabs on, as these are where our enemies will approach from. Freddy can appear in practically all these locations, and we'll have to flash him with our light 11 times before the end of the night in order to win. Foxy can appear in the same locations as Freddy, though if we open the doors or windows while he's present, we'll be killed instantly. Instead, we'll stare at him through the cameras until he rage quits and leaves. Bonnie appears a bit later in the night, and he's basically only here to punch things. If we look at him through our camera, he'll Falcon punch it out, disabling it for the rest of the night. As for Chica, she's a bit more terrifying in this level. When Chica appears, she'll start crawling through a black spot on the wall, and 3 cupcakes must be located and scared off with a flashlight in order to stop her. Recap aside, the very first thing I wanted to do was have a look out of bounds. Immediately, I stumbled across a small black box that contains something rather hilarious. Freddy can be found inside of the box, only he's not in the greatest of shape. His torso is rotated horizontally, and his legs are sticking out of his stomach in an upright position. I'm not certain, but I believe this is actually the model used for Freddy's jump scare, and the player camera will be warped into this box when it's triggered. I have no idea why this animatronic is jumbled up this way, but it's definitely an interesting find. Now just beneath the hallway, we'll find another copy of Freddy floating in the void, only this one isn't scrunched up like the other. This model is actually used when Freddy opens the main door before jump scaring you. If the player doesn't flash Freddy enough times throughout the night, you'll actually fail to complete the level, and a sequence plays out where Freddy cuts the power and jump scares you. Aside from this particular instance, Freddy is a mostly passive threat in this level, and can't kill you before 6 AM. As this cutscene continues, the clock above the double doors repeatedly resets, eventually being surrounded in children's drawings as the building begins to burn. This eerie sequence actually takes place within the same map, and a duplicate wall can be found hidden out of bounds. It's only the blue wall, a section of the ceiling, as well as the assets seen in the cutscene itself. We can also watch as this cutscene plays out, and the drawings just sort of appear, followed by the flames ignited in midair as the sequence ends. Now let's take a look at some of these other animatronics. As I said earlier, Foxy can appear in all 3 locations in the office. From an outside perspective, we can watch what happens when the camera is focused on him, where we'll see that he gets more and more agitated with time. Eventually he'll unload, vanishing from the map completely. As for Chica, she can't attack from anywhere but the wall next to the center doors, and how she attacks is a bit different as well. She'll climb through the wall, forcing her way into the office to jump scare us. If we move the camera into the hallway during this time, we'll see that her legs are sticking out through the other side. As she makes it further into her office, her legs begin floating behind her as her feet clip through them. If we do not locate each of her cupcakes, she'll fall flat on her face in her office. She then stands back up and runs directly at us, resulting in a jump scare. Now taking a look at Bonnie, he can appear in all 3 of our cameras, and his main objective is to destroy them. When you look directly at him with the camera, his jump scare animation starts, and from another angle, we can see that he's rotated upwards to face the camera. He then punches forward at the non-existent camera, and the corresponding screen will be shut off until the night ends or the player dies. In a previous version of the game, Bonnie was able to jump scare and kill the player directly, but now he'll just stare at the camera until he's spotted or he eventually unloads. So before we move on, I wanted to see what would happen if I messed with the map a little bit. The majority of this level's gameplay involves running back and forth between the doors and the window. But what would happen if we delete these particular objects? Well, as you can see, by deleting the main doorway, we can walk out into the hallway and look around as much as we want. The door at the end of this hallway is pretty misleading though, since there's no doorway here, only a solid wall behind it. If an enemy loads in during this time, we'll be able to walk directly through them without dying. Because the player can't typically access these areas, there is no reason to add collision to these particular models, or any sort of jump scare triggers for that matter. Though we're still at risk of being jump scared from the main office, these particular models are completely harmless. Having the doors and curtains removed makes it a lot easier to see what's behind them, so we don't need to rely on sound cues to know which camera Foxy's hiding in. Unfortunately, there is a downside to this. By deleting these interactable objects, the trigger and logic for each entrance have been completely broken. So by opening the closet door, I'd be moved over to the hallway just to be moved back a moment later. At one point, this map was so broken that the player would open all the doors at once, meaning I got jump scared in the window when I opened the closet. So even though it made this night a lot easier, I couldn't use this strategy to beat it. Next, let's have a look at some of this game's cutscenes, starting with the prologue. Here we'll see Scott walking towards the house in the rain, receiving a phone call that confirms the house is now his. Zooming out during the sequence reveals that the house sits atop a large grassy canvas surrounded by dense trees. There's also a circle of grass that expands out of the player's typical point of view. More interesting, there are a handful of characters hidden on this map, some harder to spot than others. Ignited Bonnie is seen clipping through the very corner of the house, and you don't actually need hacks to see this. You can actually see him here in the very beginning of the intro sequence, though he's a bit hard to see due to how dark this cutscene is. Just around the corner, we'll find Freddy standing between a tree and the side of the house. And if we move through the wall, we'll see Foxy standing inside the house. Unfortunately, the housing market is rough these days, and the interior of the house has been scooped clean. The only part of the main cast not present in this map is Chica. Maybe she took off to buy some furniture for this place, and maybe the missing wall, if we're lucky. I believe these animatronics were left behind when this map was copied over from the free roam version of the game. Something I found pretty funny is that for the duration of this cutscene, our player model is nothing more than a pair of floating arms carrying a cell phone. Perhaps not as buff as our character in Indigo Park, but hey, we'll have to make it work. The following cutscene takes place in the perspective of Michael Schmidt, who wakes up in the dark garage of the Cawthon family home. He's briefly interrogated by Scott and his wife Val, who decide to let the stranger stay with them for the night. So first and foremost, this map is only a very small section of garage, with not much more to it than that. Outside the window are a set of trees placed in front of a flat image of an orange sky, but there's not much going on here besides that. However, we can now take a closer look at Scott and his wife, who bear a striking resemblance to each other. For some reason, the developers took Scott's face and pasted it over Val's model, meaning she looks exactly like him. You can't typically see this due to the light shining in your face, but it seems Michael isn't the only doppelganger present. As the cutscene comes to a close, Val will disappear around the corner, and she just freezes in this odd pose as it happens. This is a hilarious Easter egg, though it's a bit more creepy when you realize she has no eyeballs. After completing the living room, we'll view a cutscene where Scott runs upstairs, only for a massive hallway to appear behind him as Freddy arrives to give chase. We run through the winding hallways with Freddy not far behind, and after losing him, we enter the office. Here we pick up a flashlight and read through a small paper giving us instructions on how to defeat the ignited animatronics. From another perspective, we can watch as Scott makes his way up the stairs, but he doesn't look quite right from this perspective. His head is pushed backwards into his shoulders, and his legs don't move when he walks. After turning around, what was previously a wall has magically turned into a large hallway hallway. This is done by simply removing the false wall that's placed here while the camera is facing away. It turns out illusionary walls aren't exclusive to Elden Ring after all. Behind the door beside us, Freddy is already loaded in, just staring at the floor. Until the door is opened, he remains in this pose, eventually looking up at the player. While watching this play out, I noticed a couple of things take place out of bounds. First, there are these two default textured objects placed just beyond the hallway where Freddy is located, one being a cube and the other a rectangular prism. Something else I found a bit strange is the paper and flashlight from the office are tied to Scott's model, and throughout this cutscene, they'll swing around this map haphazardly. As Freddy gives chase, this cutscene becomes downright hilarious. Scott is running through the halls, swinging his arms in front of him without ever moving his legs, while Freddy follows closely behind, gliding across the floor like the world's worst Roomba. They run around this maze of halls, sliding through these odd clouds of green smoke. As we near the office, Scott's head rotates around completely, his arms still swinging in front of him. As we grab the paper up ahead, you'll see that the rest of the office behind us is incomplete. And if we head all the way back to the start of the chase, we'll find Freddy in his original hallway. However, he's in his running pose and clipping through the wall now. Also, in case you're curious, the stairs at the start of this scene don't actually lead anywhere, and the first floor was a total lie. Zooming out, we can view this whole map in a single shot, seeing the various hallways we sprint through, as well as the black barriers that obscure our view through the windows. Next, we head into the basement, where a cutscene shows Scott walking down the stairs, only to be startled by the screen behind him turning on. After yelling at the monitor for a while, an unseen attacker knocks Scott unconscious from behind. From another perspective, this cutscene is, of course, just as ridiculous as you'd expect. Floating down the stairs, Scott is jump scared by the computer, resulting in this hilarious pose. For the duration of this sequence, he stares up directly at the ceiling, and I believe this is done so that his head does not clip through the camera and become visible during the cutscene. When Scott is attacked, we'll see that he dramatically throws himself off the chair and sinks into the floor, with no attacker anywhere in sight. This leads us into the following level's intro cutscene, where Scott finds himself strapped to a chair behind a desk. The voice of Michael comes through the radio, basically informing Scott that he's as good as dead. On the computer screen, we can see the furnace burning brightly, and eventually Creation appears and begins approaching the camera. Scott slams the radio down as the cutscene ends and the night begins. So it turns out this area is occupied by more than just the attic, as the furnace is also present just behind the small wall outside the window. Just beneath this small basement room, Creation can be found frozen in place out of bounds. The computer monitor observing the furnace isn't a pre-rendered video, but instead a live view of the small room behind us. When Creation appears on the screen, we can see that this hidden model was moved in front of the furnace, which I thought was pretty neat. As for Scott, he doesn't do a whole lot during this cutscene, besides that freaky thing with his head. Similar to the flashlight and paper in the Freddy chase, the radio we pick up is actually floating around us as this sequence takes place, and the object on our desk will be moved deep into the void the moment we grab it. In the ending cutscene, we watch as Scott crawls through the burning attic, while Michael trash talks us through the radio some more. After telling Scott that the night won't end until he's consumed by the fire, we're picked up by the burnt silhouette of who I believe is Michael as the screen goes black, accompanied by Scott's blood-curdling scream. We then see a few panning shots of the house as it burns from the inside, leading us to the end of the game. With the lights on, we can see that the board beside us falls on our head as soon as we escape our restraint. Scott then begins to crawl across the floor like one of the zombies from Half-Life, with his legs sticking directly through the floor. Beneath the map, we can actually see the figure that appears in front of us just beneath the attic's entrance. They're definitely doing a good job of imitating Scott though, since their legs are bent up behind them with their feet curling over their shoulders. This was not what I expected, but I can't say I'm surprised either. Scott, once again staring into the ceiling, crawls forward as he tries to escape the attic. Michael is then warped directly in front of us, only here we can see that he's just kind of hovering his hands over our head. Now I unfortunately couldn't move the camera around in this next scene, so instead I want to show off something interesting. Now throughout the game, there are a few narrations that play over panning shots of the levels we play through. These areas aren't all that interesting, as they're mostly smaller versions of the full levels, but here you can see one that's a bit different. This is the map used for the narration that plays before entering the basement, and you can see it's a long wall with windows that get more eroded the further you go in. There's a wall behind us as well, and at the very end we can see Golden Freddy sitting in midair, staring through the window. It's a super basic map, but the effect it creates is actually pretty cool looking. Now when looking through the game files, I found a map titled Newspapers. This is a mostly empty map containing each of the newspapers and their surroundings seen in the post-level shots that display them. They're all lined up separately here, and the cameras move between them depending on where you are in the story. But with that, we wrap up today's behind-the-scenes look of the Drawer Creation story mode. I hope you all enjoyed today's dive into the spooky fan game. Subscribe if you did, and I'll see you all in my next game-breaking video. Cheers!